Hello, my dear ones, and welcome to online classes. I'm your English teacher, Akshay G, back with another new concept. It's been quite a long time that we hadn't met, isn't it? Satish sir used to engage English for you. As he is on leave, I'm asked to engage English for you. My dear ones, as usual, as you all know, my style of beginning. Before I begin any new concept, I'd like to give introduction to the title or to the concept. My dear ones, let me speak some relevant things about that new concept. I hope and I guess that most of you love animals. When I say animals, I mean to say pets. Most of you might have pet dogs at home, parrots, or fish, or cats, or cattle, etc. Because we human beings love to be with animals. That's the reason maybe the Marx calls us as called us as social animal, because we'd love to be among other living organisms. We love animals. I'm sure most of you love animals. That's the reason you take care of them more than human beings, with great care and love and affection. But my dear ones, in this, pandemic situation of COVID-19, human beings are suffering. We all know that. With human beings, many living organisms are also suffering. You may think this coronavirus attacks only human beings. Yeah, that's right. But it came from animals, that we cannot forget. That's what scientists say. And due to this lockdown and all, which was for the safety of human beings, for our safety, central government took that step of locking down the whole country for 2 to 3 months. But in this time, we should not ignore the fact that animals suffered a lot, because you see, stray dogs, stray cats, they they depend on the food what the human beings throw on the roads, or in the garbage, or sometimes some of the human beings they fed them. But in this lockdown, it was very difficult for them to survive. By the grace of God, some have survived, but some have not. So let's keep in our minds that we must take care of other living organisms around us. Because you see, my dear ones, we are living with them or among them. Let me say among them. We are one of the creatures which Creator created. I mean, the God created. You should not feel that we are the supreme. You see, we are supreme. We are, we can do anything, or we can rule all the other living organisms. We shouldn't become that dominant. And my dear ones, taking care doesn't mean that tying up the pet animals in our backyard or front yard. We must remember, taking care means looking after the animals. I mean, the health of the animals, the food, and so on. Because most of the people, what they think, Nowadays, it has become, sign of dignity, sign of prestige in the society to have pets in their houses and workplace. It's not so. You shouldn't do that. It is not the sign of dignity or sign of prestige in the society. It is your duty to take care of animals, because you all know, you all have studied science and you are studying science, where science tells us that there is something called food chain. We all are interlinked. We all are interlinked. Without animals, without other living organisms, we cannot live. That's why Albert Einstein said, till butterflies and honeybees are alive, human beings are alive. The death of, or the extinct of butterflies and honeybees would be the last day for mankind. That's what Einstein said, because it's all interlinked. I'll not go in depth how it is interlinked and what is this food chain and all. I hope you learn in science, or you might have learned already. My dear ones, the reason today I'm speaking all about animals and taking care of them and all of this is because today, let me share screen with you all as I do all the time. Today we are going to study a new poem. Here we go. Here you can see the title of the poem, my dear ones. That is Animals. Animals. The title is so simple, but has got deep meaning in it. My dear ones, this poem is written by Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman is the poet of this poem called Animal. And this is taken from Song of Myself in Leaves of Grass. My dear ones, follow the words I read. I move the cursor. Here you can see the cursor. I move the cursor upon the words I read. You shall follow the same. And when you watch my classes, sit with textbooks so that you can follow whatever I'm explaining. Here, this poem is an extract. It is taken from the collection of poems of Walt Whitman, that is from Song of Myself in Leaves of Grass. Walt Whitman is, let's say, about poet. Little information is given here, and then we shall go to the poem. Walt Whitman is a major figure in early American poetry. He comes under, in literature, we have made, parts kind of, sections kind of, American poetry, British poetry, British literature, American literature. Likewise, there are many. I'll not go in depth about it. In American literature, there are poetries, prose, novels, dramas, etc. In poetry, there are many poets. And among those poets is one, that is Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman is a major figure in early American poetry. In an age when all poetry was rhymed and metrical, Whitman made a break with tradition and wrote a revolutionary new kind of poetry in free verse. He was a nonconformist in all aspects, including his social life. My dear ones, he was a revolutionary thinker. He did not go with the tradition. He started his own, revolutionary new kind of poetry in free verse, which means, let me tell you, my dear ones, the background. In his time, or in the time when Whitman lived, at that time, in American literature, there was a tradition to write a poem. Most of the poets wrote poems in that same tradition, in that same manner. But Walt Whitman was the first man to start a revolutionary new kind of poetry, which was freestyle or free verse poetry. And he was non-conformist. What is the meaning of that? He did not follow the tradition, as I said, the way, the norms in the society. He had his own way of living his life. His style was unique. That's why we can consider him as revolutionary thinker. Walt Whitman, from 1819 to 1892. Let's see about the poem, my dear ones. Animals, written by, yes, written by, say it, Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman. The poet tells that he feels more at home with animals than humans, whom he finds complicated and false. My dear ones, this poem is all about animals. The love and the affection and the care that animals express towards human beings is more important, is more valuable than what human beings fake. Most of the human beings fake that they love. Most of them, show fake care, affection. It is just for show off, not the real one. Here, the poet feels that animals have got the actual, the real love and the affection, which he feels is more valuable than that of the complicated and false relationships of human beings. In this whole poem, my dear ones, a very short poem, in this poem, he goes on explaining about, how human beings are, how animals are. I mean to say, comparatively, he goes on explaining. He compares animals with human beings. Their love and humans' love, their affection and humans. He just goes on explaining comparatively. Let's get into the poem, my dear ones. Animals, written by Walt Whitman. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. Write down the meanings. Some difficult words are there, my dear ones. Sit with pencil and textbook. Wherever I have underlined, these are some of the difficult words, of which I'm going to tell you the meanings. Simple words, simple meanings. Please write down. Placid means they are very calm, they are very peaceful. They do not hurry. That's the meaning of placid. There he speaks of, my dear ones, they are very quiet. They are very quiet, calm. That's the meaning of placid. And self-contained means they are complete. Their behavior, their love, their affection is real. The true love we can find there. So he calls them as self-contained ones. Their love is self-contained. Here he uses the word self-contained, which means complete. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so calm. Placid means calm and self-contained. The poet begins by saying that he thinks he can live with animals. He can live with animals because they are so calm. They are so complete. He feels that animals are complete. Their behavior, their love, their affection is true. I stand and look at them long and long. Long and long, which gives the meaning that he stands there and look at them with love for a long time. He doesn't even understand how the time passed by when he stands there looking at them. So he says here, I stand and look at them long and long because he loves them the most, and the animals do. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. Meaning, write down the meaning, ಬರ್ಕೊಳ್ರಿ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಬರ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ನನ್ನ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ನೋಡುವಾಗ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಬುಕ್ಕು ಮತ್ತು ಪೆನ್ಸಿಲ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕುಂದಿರ್ಬೇಕು. ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಿರ್ತೇನೆ, ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕ್ರಿ. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. Whine, to cry out loudly in high pitch. ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಒದರೋದು ಅಂತಾರಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ಯಾಕಾತು, ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆನ ಹಿಂಗ್ಯಾಕಾತು, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಯಾಕಾಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಕಂಪ್ಲೇಂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಭಾಳ ಜನ, isn't it? Here he starts comparing. Comparatively, he goes on explaining, my dear ones. He compares the condition, the love, the situation of animals and the human beings. From here onwards, they do not, from this line onwards, he goes on explaining comparatively. He says they do not sweat and whine about their condition. Who are they? Animals. They do not sweat. They do not sweat like human beings. They do not complain with loud, high pitch, voice about their condition, that only this happened to them, why did this happen to me, all of that. Usually human beings do that, but whereas animals, they do not do. They have no vocal cord to speak like human beings. They don't have the highly developed brain like human beings, yet they live happily. They express the true feelings. That's what the poet is saying. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. My dear ones, they do not, the animals do not remain awake in the night. Dark means in the night, during the night. They do not, sleep with open eyes and cry. Weep means, write down the meaning, barcode meaning. Weep means cry. Cry for their sins. Sins ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಾಗ ಹೇಳೋದಾದ್ರ ಪಾಪಗಳು. ಪಾಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳೋದು, ಪಾಪಗಳು, ಪುಣ್ಯ ಪಾಪ, ಪಾಪ. ಸಿನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಪಾಪ. ಅಂದ್ರ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಮಕ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬದ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಇಷ್ಟು ಪಾಪ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಅಷ್ಟು ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಹಿಂಗಾಯ್ತು ಹಂಗಾಯ್ತು, ಇದೇ ವಿಚಾರ ಬರ್ತಾವ ಹೊರತು ನಿದ್ದೆ ಬರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಂಗ ಅನಿಮಲ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಆಗುದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ poet. The poet says there that the animals do not remain awake in the night time and cry for their sins, because they do not sin. They are animals, not human beings. We human beings, out of greediness, out of earning more and more money, name and fame and etc., commit many sins, and in the night time, instead of sleeping, remain awake and cry about the same. The animals do not do that. Animals do not do that. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. Here, poet says that most of the human beings, they discuss among themselves, with their friends, with their relatives, with their parents, with their known people, what their duty is to the God. Here, by saying duty to God, poet means that they are born to do that. Human beings are born to do that. Still, they don't do it. They instead sit and complain. They simply discuss about their duties instead of doing them. Whereas animals, they do not do this. They do not discuss their duty to God with him and make poet to get sick of that kind of discussion. Poet feels that he gets sick out of such discussions, usually when human beings get into such discussions with him. Not one is dissatisfied in spite of doing all of this. After doing all of this, after all of this, human beings are not satisfied. My dear ones, human beings are not satisfied after all of this. Whereas animals, they are not, one is dissatisfied, the poet says. Not even single animal is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Mania, demented means mental illness, mental illness. Mania, the craziness. You might have heard the words mania and phobia, phobia and mania. Phobia means fear, mania means craziness. Like some have uh, I mean the water, the phobia of water, phobia of fire, fear of certain things. Here, mania means the craziness about certain things. So the poet says, not one animal is sick mentally about the craziness of owning the things. Because human beings usually, they go on, showing off, speaking all about, or speaking always about the things that they have owned. They think when they show it off, the things that they have owned, that's that's how they're increasing their prestige in the society. But that the poet calls it as demented, which means the mental illness, my dear ones. Animals do not have this. Animals never express, or they do not own the things. In fact, they do not own, they do not, express it that way. Not one kneels to another, not to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. My dear ones, I have put bracket to this line because I must explain very important message the poet is giving in this poem, through this poem. Not one kneels to another, which means human beings do that. We kneel down before anybody, just anybody, because we need to get our work done. So most of the time we request, we beg, or we kneel down. But whereas animals, they do not kneel down to anyone because they are self-contained, they are complete, they are self-dependent. They do not cheat anyone. They do not need to kneel down before anyone. And, nor to his kind that lived thousands of years ago. They do not even kneel down. They do not even, bow down to the kind who lived thousands of years ago of the same community. Which means here the poet is referring to the miraculous person, the sage or the god, whom the people considered to have lived long ago and who belong to the same community to whom they belong. That's the reason they kneel down and they pray and they bow down. The animals do not do that. Animals do not do that. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. Over this whole earth, human beings are all the time unhappy or dissatisfied, or they expect respect. You see, they demand. They don't just expect, they demand sometimes. Here, animals do not expect or demand respect, nor they are unhappy. They are all the time happy, satisfied. So they show their relations to me and I accept them. That's the reason the poet says, when they show their respect, their relationships, their pure love in their relationship towards poet, he simply accepts them. He simply accepts them. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possession. My dear ones, token here means token of love, token of respect, token of honor. All of those tokens is here the poet is speaking. They demonstrate that plainly in their possessions. That's the only thing they own. Here the poet says, they come, they bring me tokens of myself, which means they bring him the love that he is showing towards them. They are bringing back the same pure love. That's why he uses the word tokens of myself. Here, tokens of myself means the love, pure love, which he shows towards them, they are bringing back to him with the same level of purity. And they show them plainly without any second thought, without any planning, without any other intentions. They simply express. That's the only thing that they have owned. That is their only possession, poet says. I wonder where they get those tokens. And then he says, he wonders from where they get these tokens, from where or how come they show the same pure love. Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop him? And ends the poem with a question that he asks this question to himself, not to the readers. He and makes the readers to think over this. Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop him? I might have showed that pure love, that token of love, honor, respect to the animals long ago and forgot about it, neglected about it, and they're bringing back to me. That's what the poet thinks and makes the readers to think about. This is a poem, Animals, written by Walt Whitman. This poem is taken from The Song of Myself in Leaves of Grass, the collection of poems. My dear ones, I hope you have understood the poem. If you have any kind of doubts, you can ask me. Try to write the question and answers on your own. If you have any kind of doubts, you can ask me. Thank you. I shall conclude here itself.